Awesome. Here we are. Hi, Wendy. Thank you.
JJ.
Thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you're very busy. And at ABLG, it's really important to us to get this safety message. So we proclaim this, it's the summer of safety for people with autism. And we're really trying to feature people who are doing that same work. So I'm really grateful that you're here and that you're taking the time to help get this message across to parents.
I love that you're focusing on safety for this summer. I think that's fantastic. You really need to bring a lot more attention to this issue with so many kids wandering off and so many tragedies happening. So it's wonderful that you're focusing on that.
Yeah, thank you. And for what you guys are doing, it's just amazing. So first, just if you don't mind taking a minute to introduce yourself and the National Autism Association.
Okay, sure. I'm Wendy Fournier. I am the mom of 3 kids. My youngest is affected by autism. She's 15 years old now. Her name is Allie. And got involved with NAA way back in 2003 when we formed the organization. And I have been working for NAA for 12 years now.
Wow.
So it's been a while.
Tell us a little bit about your role with the NAA.
Okay, I am, well, I'm a founding board member, and I've been the president of NAA since 2006. So my focus is really on making our programs work, developing our programs, making sure that our outreach is there, you know, with the community, kind of directing things, and, you know, being the spokesperson for NAA and, you know, helping with the day-to-day operations of the organization. We're actually in Rhode Island now. So now it's here with me and our executive director, Kelly Vanasek. And we're in a beautiful town of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. You know, great location. And, you know, we're just really happy with, you know, NAA and the programs that we're doing. So really that's our focus every day, is how can we help as many families as possible across the country.
Yeah, and I really loved the mission statement that I took a look at on the website, and it reads, "The mission of the National Autism Association is to respond to the most urgent needs of the autism community, providing real help and hope so that all affected can reach their full potential." That is so powerful. Thank you. Yeah, how is it determined? I love that simplicity and just straight to the point. And so how is it determined, like, what the most urgent needs are of the autism community?
Well, it's what people are telling us, you know. So when we're getting phone calls and we are at conferences and we're talking to hundreds of parents, thousands of parents, and then we're all parents of kids with autism ourselves. Yeah. So we know what kind of struggles families are facing and individuals with autism are facing. And there are, you know, a lot more resources available to sort of higher functioning end of the spectrum. You know, I mean, there's a lot of advantages and there's a lot of disadvantages depending on where you are on the spectrum. But we're focusing on what we call the most urgent needs, which are the ones that seriously affect the quality of life of our kids and put them at risk of harm, injury, and even death. So a lot of our programs now are based on safety issues.
Yeah, which brings us to the big Red Safety Toolbox. But why and how was it created?
The Big Red Safety Box was an idea of Lori McElwain. She's the co-founder of NAA and really the driving force behind all of our safety programs that we're doing. So we started working on the wandering issue back in 2007. We had experiences with our own children. We had heard, you know, several news stories were starting to come out, and it was just becoming more and more frequent. And having had those terrifying experiences ourselves, we wanted to know, how often is this happening? You know, is it really common? So we started really digging into the wandering issue back then. And in 2011, we thought, there are no resources out there for families. So their kids are getting out of the house or out of school. They're being injured. You know, there were several deaths at that point. And when we asked parents, have you received any kind of advice on this type of behavior from your doctor or from your school staff or anybody, the answer was always no, that they had nobody had ever mentioned it to them. They had no resources available to them. So then Lori came up with the idea of the big red safety box. And she said, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to put actual physical resources into the hands of families so that they can be educated first and foremost that this is a problem that does affect a lot of people with autism. Mm-hmm. And then we're giving them tools so that they can start implementing strategies to prevent those incidents from happening in the first place. So that was in 2011. We were trying to figure out how are we going to pay for this because it's really expensive. The program itself is really expensive, the boxes and all the contents in the boxes, and even shipping them. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want people to pay for this stuff. We wanted everybody to have access to it. So we were blessed to receive a grant from the American Legion Child Welfare Foundation. And with that money, we started this program in 2011. And I think at that time we did 1,000 boxes. Wow. And we put them online, had an application process online, and they were gone in less than 6 hours.
Wow, that says
1,000 boxes. So there's a huge need. Huge. Absolutely huge need. And since then, we're now up to 18,000 boxes. 18,000 families have received a Big Red Safety Box.
Wow, in just 4 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I know you just closed the grant application enrollment period. So how do people access, just for the people who are going to listen for about 10 minutes and then run, how do people access the Big Red Safety Toolbox?
Well, right now we have finished our grant round, so we now need to, get funding and inventory and start putting them together for our next grant round. So if people are interested in applying for one during our next round, they just need to join our mailing list at nationalautismassociation.org. And then every time we start a grant round, whether it's Big Red Safety Box or any of our other grant programs, we send out an email notification to let everybody know that they can go online and apply. But in the meantime, people can go to our website and download our Be Ready booklet. And this is something that's included in the Big Red Safety Box. Mm-hmm. So actually all of the printed information that we include in the Big Red Safety Box that has, strategies to prevent wandering, and sample IEP letters to give to school, and a first responder kit, and family wandering emergency plan. Like all of the really important printed things that are in there can be downloaded right now from our website for free. So they can just go online and grab that.
Awesome. Can you give that address one more time?
nationalautismassociation.org.
Perfect. That's perfect. And so when it comes to the Big Red Safety Toolbox, what exactly is in it? What is it for the people who aren't familiar with it?
The box consists of the Be Ready booklet, which is a pretty significant booklet with information on, first of all, wandering behaviors, what we know about wandering behaviors, and how to prevent, how to implement strategies in your home to prevent wandering from happening, right? And then on safeguarding your home. So we give suggestions on, what should you do as far as locks on the doors, alarms on the doors, and those are included in the box. So the IEP letter is really important because if you have a child who's at risk of wandering, we've had so many cases that are, stemming from a school environment. So it's really important that the school staff be aware that your child has this tendency to wander or bolt. And so what we suggest is discussing that during an IEP meeting and providing a letter that can be attached to the IEP with, instructions and sort of safety protocols that should be followed when it comes to your child if they are a runner. So that's a really important aspect.
Just to interrupt for a second, that's shocking. That's something I didn't realize because you think of school as a safe place.
Oh, no, a lot of these cases are, originating from a school environment. Like Avante Okendo was a very high-profile case, a very tragic and sad case. But, he left school. So it's really important for parents not only to have a discussion with school staff, but to also go to the school, physically go to the school and look at the child's environment in school from a safety point of view. So I did that, at my daughter's school. When I went in, I saw certain doors that were, outer doors that she should never have access to. So we discussed, I discussed it with the staff at the school, the administrators at the school, about putting gates up, about putting alarms up, about using stop signs or visual aids, that kind of thing, so that the kids, would not have access to those outer doors, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, my daughter was very high risk for wandering and bolting, so that was, just one other reason why she really needed a one-to-one aid and adult supervision every minute of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is a really enlightening fact that so many of these incidences of wandering are happening from school. It's really shocking. So I hope that brings some awareness to the people watching this interview that it's not just the home environment that you have control over, but also keeping your eye across the community and other environments that you don't have as much control over.
Exactly. Ooh. And right now we are working on a new program for teachers. So we're going to be announcing that really soon, but we're going to try to address the safety issue on a much larger scale throughout our schools and across the country.
What a great initiative. So back to what's in the box. So you have the printed materials, the IEP checklist. You mentioned there's some of the alarms that are actually included in the box. What else? We have 2 GE alarms, so they're magnetic. They're the magnetic alarms. So they don't need to be installed with screws or anything like that. They have an adhesive backing. And one goes on the door, and then one goes on the door jamb. So when they're next to each other, there's a magnet there. But if they become pulled apart from each other, an alarm is going to sound. So they're really, really loud. They're like incredibly obnoxiously loud. Great. So if your child were to open the door or window, it depends on your child where you're going to strategically place these things. Yeah. But they are extremely effective at keeping kids in the house. And there's also an order form in there because we work with Road ID because we believe it's so important for kids to have some form of identification, especially if they're nonverbal. That has parental contact information. But also letting first responders or anybody who would come in contact know that they do have autism or that they are nonverbal, whatever is appropriate. So with Road ID, we have these shoe tags created, Velcro shoe tags. And so when you receive your Big Red Safety Box, you fill out this form with the information that you want engraved on the shoe tag and send it to Road ID, and then they will engrave it, your customized information, and send it back. So you'll have this ID tag for your child. Wow. We also put stop signs in there, adhesive stop signs, because a lot of our kids, are very visual, and just a simple visual aid can be so helpful. So you put a little stop sign up by the door, all of the doors, windows, and it may cause your child to pause even for a couple of seconds, and that may be enough time to prevent something tragic from wandering. Yeah. We have window clings in there too, one for your car, one for your home. Great. And it says that there is a person with autism who may not respond to verbal commands, which we think is really important too, because a lot of our kids, say you were in a car accident or something like that, and the police were trying to talk to your child and the child's not answering, it's important to let people know what's going on in an emergency situation. So those are in there as well. Wonderful. It's so comprehensive. And then on the National Autism Association website, it's also there. You have some downloadables also that are involved in the kit, like the stop signs are downloadable there in the safety shop. There are you can actually print out the caregiver toolkit, the Be Ready booklet, and there are stop signs already in there. So you could, when you print that, you could cut those out and tape them onto a wall if you wanted to. And then we have in our online store, we have some random things that we include in the box because a lot of people have multiple kids, multiple doors. They need extra stuff. So we do have some stuff available in our website. I love that you have the noisy alarms because a lot of times when we go out and do an initial intake with our families and I asked we always do a safety checklist to make sure the home is secured, whether or not the child has ever been reported to have wandered or not. And a lot of times the parents have a home alarm system like ADT or something, which is great if someone's breaking in, but the alarms when someone comes or goes, they go dee-dee-dee-dee. Oh, yeah. And the family desensitizes, and they don't even hear if someone's coming or going. So, the noisy alarms are something we also really try to promote, getting something that is really going to bring your attention to the fact that someone's coming or going that you're not going to get used to.
And you can't rely just on one thing either. You know, like we are always using the phrase multi-layered approach to safety. So just because you have, you know, alarms on your doors doesn't mean your child is going to be safe, you know, and just because you put stop signs up doesn't mean your child's going to be safe. And, you know, if they have a tracking device, does not mean your child is going to be safe. You have to implement as many things as are appropriate for your child using that multi-layered approach so that every single possible angle that you can cover is covered.
That's so important. That is so important. So if this is overwhelming to a parent, because when it comes to, you know, home education programs, which is what ABLG specializes in, or you know, school programs, we talk about language and academics and social skills and, you know, reducing challenging behavior. And so safety often falls to the bottom of the list. And in terms of wandering, in terms of internet safety, in terms of safety and technology, I mean, it falls down. So if that's something overwhelming for parents, like what are 3 things that they could just do tomorrow that would significantly impact how safe their children are?
Well, the door alarms I think are key. Absolutely, you need to know if your child's gonna walk out of the house. So you want to make sure that you have alarms or significant locking devices on your door, and it may be, you know, for some kids, different types of locks are appropriate, you know, for others. The problem is you got to stay one step ahead of your child. So you may have a younger child and use a little hook and eye lock on the door for a while, but there will come a day when your child figures out how they can open that up. So securing the doors and windows is really important, making sure that, you know, that you have supervision over your child at all times as much as possible. So it's not possible for anyone as a caregiver to have their eyes on their child 24 hours a day. It's not possible because you need to sleep and you need to go to the bathroom, and you know, so it's not realistic to think that any of us can watch our kids for 24 hours a day. But there are ways that we can you know, kind of keep an eye or an ear on our kids. So I suggest using things like baby monitors. You know, so if your child is, you know, so let's say that they're playing in their room, and you're going to go take a shower, something like that, you bring the baby monitor with you so you can hear, you know, so you can hear everything that's going on. At least you have that, because it's so hard, especially for single parents, to feel safe. And there are so many that come to us and say, you know, I can't sleep at night, or one story that just haunts me is this mom who said she takes her couch every night. She takes her couch, slides it in front of the front door, and she sleeps on the couch because that's the only way she can sleep at night.
Wow.
And talking to your child, you know, to the extent that you can. So if you're developing educational programs, you know, of course, everything with our kids has to be tailored to how they learn and how they understand things. So it may be using social stories, maybe using some sort of a schedule for them. And I should probably talk about that a little bit more. You want to teach them, you know, about keeping themselves safe, and teach them about rules on when it comes to leaving the house. But the absolute most important thing that I think we need to understand with our kids is, what is their trigger? Because wandering and elopement is a form of communication. Okay? So it's our kids trying to say, I want to get to something, or I desperately need to get away from something. So figuring that out can help you to develop strategies to prevent the need for them to wander. You want to prevent those triggers or minimize the opportunity for those triggers to arise. So I will give you an example. A lot of our kids are drawn to water. So, you know, of course, the scariest for all of us is the kids who are drawn to water. But, you know, they're trying to get out of the house because they want to bolt over to the neighbor's pool, or they want to bolt to the nearest pond, something like that. If you know that that's your child's trigger, then you can work with them on a swimming schedule. So let's say you create a schedule and a visual schedule for your child. Tuesdays and Thursdays are swimming days, right? Then they know, after, you know, they get used to this and they're in jive with the whole schedule thing, right? They know that on Tuesday and Thursday they're going to get to go swimming, and you're consistent with it, and every single Tuesday and Thursday you take them, then they can look forward to that, know that it's going to happen, and know that they don't have to try to sneak out to make it happen. So there are little things like that that you can do. But understanding the triggers is key. And when it comes to the bolting triggers, like certain noises that might set our kids off, and you need to have that level of awareness for the things that really bother them and kind of be one step ahead, preventing those. Let's say it's a dog barking, or a baby crying, prevention as much as possible, but instantaneous response from the caregiver. When you hear that sound that you know is a trigger, you can de-escalate your child immediately before they feel the need to elope.
And really reducing that need to, like you said, sneak out because they know that they're going to have access to what they want at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Wandering is a form of communication. I wish we could put that up in big. I'm going to figure out how to do it. We'll put it up in big, bold, red letters. I want to get away from something, or I want to get something.
That's typically what's going on with the kids. If you look at the cases, that's usually what's happening. Is they're trying to either get to something, or like in Avante's case, trying to get away from something. Right. So you figure that out. It's all about prevention. I mean, response is really important, and we put a lot of time and a lot of resources into response because searching for a kid with autism is really difficult. So we've helped develop search and rescue guidelines with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. But we don't want to get to that point. We want to work on prevention first. So if a child does not have an effective form of communication, whether it's picture exchange, or sign language, or an iPad with, a communication app, they need to get one. It's really important that we give our kids an effective means of communication. Yeah. That's the only way they can tell us they want to go out. If they go, they go, right?
Right. Absolutely. So when it comes to families, kind of trying to implement all this on their own, so for our professionals who are watching, how can they support the families that they work with in getting some of these safety things in place, some of the prevention strategies in place? Like, what kind of support can professionals offer?
I think helping with social stories for kids, helping kids to learn safety skills on their own, helping families to secure their homes and any other areas that the child is in, helping families to make sure that their child does have an effective means of communication. Speech therapists can be really helpful with that kind of thing. And, picture schedules. So if you're doing any kind of, ABA or any other kind of behavior therapy, incorporating some sort of social stories in there about safety would be really important. And I think, professionals can come in that area and just, and then just give everything another set of eyes, looking from that safety point of view.
Right. Things that a family might take for granted because they see every day, a window or something. And we also, we try to prioritize if children, even our children who don't have a lot of language abilities, we have a stop program. So we hang the stop signs or a picture of a caregiver, and we just teach the kids when you see it to go to a caregiver and whatever form of, so even at any level of functioning, we can really teach the kids to stop at the door, stop at the window, and go get an adult before they leave the house.
You know what? That was actually a goal in my daughter's IEP for about 3 years, getting her to respond to the word stop. Because she would just bolt down the hallway at school, and it took a really long time for her to learn, to actually respond to that. And now she does, and it's just a huge gift. And when I tell her to stop, and she stops, and it still makes me go, "Oh, she stopped! Yay!"
It's a big success, though, and I think that's a really important point. It took 3 years to teach, but even if it takes 3 years to teach, it needs to be taught.
Absolutely.
If there was a big, one big takeaway that everyone watching this video would, go back to their home or go back to the families they work with and do this thing or take away this message, what would it be?
Figure out the trigger. I should make that into some kind of rhyme. I think we need to go figure the trigger. I mean, that is absolutely the number one message that I have for caregivers, parents, even professionals. Because if you want to prevent wandering, you need to know what's causing it.
That is so important. Figure out the trigger. We'll come up
and then we could have titles. We could be trigger figure outers, right?
That would be amazing.
Great. Yeah.
There could be specialists who just do that.
Yes. Yes. I'm a professional trigger figure outer. How can I help you? Yes.
It sounds like Bounty, the quicker picker upper. So we like to kind of, we're all professionals, and we're really, in the business of really, identifying urgent things for people with autism. But just on a human note, we love to ask everybody the same couple of questions that are not related to autism, just so that, because we're all human and we're all connecting on, whatever level, parents to professionals. Yep. So, Wendy, if you were on a desert island and you could only take 3 albums with you, what would they be?
Oh, well, first of all, is there a tiki bar on this island?
Yes.
Okay.
You get a tiki bar for all the hard work you've been doing.
Okay. Number 1 is Boston, their first album, my absolute favorite album of all time.
Nice.
Number 2 would be Wicked on Broadway, the Broadway show, with Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth.
I bet sometimes you feel like you're defying gravity in the work that you're doing. So I
Gravity is very meaningful to me in so many ways. So that's one of my favorite albums. Number 3, this is obscure, but I listen to it a lot. Nobody will know what I'm talking about, but it's by Danny Wright, and it's called Fantasies with a PH, Fantasies, and it's beautiful piano music. It's very soothing. And the first time I heard it, I was actually in a spa. So I said, "What is that?" Because it just completely it relaxes me and it de-stresses me. So that's one of my favorite albums, believe it or not.
Brings you back to that place of relaxation and to have some time for you. And nice.
So we blessed Boston. We blessed in the car. But definitely not the Danny Wright music. That's not car music. Down, right?
Can't sing along? No. Nice. If there's a resource, so actually one of the reasons that I contacted you, because our last interview, who was Eric Chesson from AutismFitness.com, I asked him this question and he said National Autism Association. So I thought, let me get the National Autism Association next. If there was a resource for people with developmental disabilities that you recommend, like, to everyone, what resource is that?
To everyone? One resource?
People. Yeah, like what's something you find yourself saying a lot? Like I find myself saying a lot, you need to go get the big Red Safety Toolbox, you need to get the caregiver checklist. It's just something we recommend a lot, because why reinvent the wheel? So what's something that you recommend a lot?
I find myself talking a lot about the state councils for developmental disabilities, because I'm finding that so many parents and caregivers don't know that they exist.
Wow.
And it would give them access to resources in their own state that they don't even know about. So I find myself talking about that a lot. So for people who don't know, the Department of Health and Human Services has federal funding available, and every single state in the country has a council for developmental disabilities under their Department of Health.
Wow.
And this is a resource that we should all be taking advantage of, even if it's just to get a list of different service providers that are available, or, get some help in obtaining a Medicaid waiver, that kind of stuff. So believe it or not, something really that simple needs to get out there, because a lot of us, I didn't know what it was until several years ago. I was talking to somebody in DC, and they said, well, they should just go to the Council for Developmental Disabilities. And I said, what is that? Didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
So that's
Didn't even know about it either. That's wonderful. So
definitely would pass
those are federally funded money that comes from our government into our state governments that do, like, what do those councils do? What do they have?
It's their job basically to help coordinate services and to make sure that they have a list of resources available, so they can kind of point you in the right direction when you have a child with a developmental disability.
Awesome. That's what they do. Wonderful resource to know.
And then another another really great resource that I recommend is from TACA, TACA, and their website is tacanow.org. And for families who have a newly diagnosed child, I strongly recommend their Journey Guide. It's a wonderful book that kind of takes you step by step with all the things you should be looking at with your child, from dealing with agencies and therapies to diet and nutrition. It's a really great resource.
TACA.org, TACA.org.
TAC, it's actually TACAnow.org is their website.
Yep. Wonderful. Okay, great. We'll put that one up too.
That's great.
So, Wendy, what is your favorite thing about what you do?
I think Kelly and I, she's our executive director, we love Oprah Day. So our Oprah Day is when we're giving away things, like Big Red Safety Boxes, or most recently our Give a Voice program. So that is iPads for kids who are nonverbal or minimally verbal and adults. Our oldest was in their 20s this past round that we just did. So our favorite thing is getting to call families and say, hey, your application was approved and we're sending you an iPad. So it's like, your child we're giving your child a voice. And there's so many times when we make these phone calls and the parents will just break down. They're just, so happy and so relieved that they're getting this help for their child. And that is the best. I mean, that just fills your soul, So that's Oprah Day. And we laugh like because we go, you get an iPad and you get an iPad, and it's just it just is amazing.
Oh, really. That's fun. And watching so many of our families have to fight so hard for the things that they need, from adaptive devices to support in schools to their ABA home therapy programs and fighting their insurance. It must just be such a great thing to just get a gift, get something easily. Like what a nice thing.
To get help. I know, it's so unusual that somebody actually gives you help. Yeah. It really is. That's why we started NAA. That's why we created this organization, because there were so many, a group of parents, and we felt like we had nobody to reach out to for help for our kids. And we were all struggling, and we still are. Everybody's still struggling, but we're doing the best we can. NAA is focused really on that niche of helping to address the most urgent needs. That's what we're doing.
So important.
And I think it's important to really try and stay focused, because you can't do everything for everybody. There aren't enough resources, so everybody really needs to focus on their strengths and where they can really provide meaningful assistance to families and make a difference in their lives.
Yeah. What are some of the urgent needs that you see coming up, would be my last question for you. So safety definitely being an urgent need, because I think we can agree that the costs of not addressing that, well, we've seen what those are, and it's not something any parent wants to go through. So what are some of the other urgent topics that are coming up as our kids are getting older and,
Well, the police training as our kids are getting older is a big factor, because we need first responders to recognize that somebody may have autism, so they may not be responding to verbal commands. We see a lot of dangerous situations happening out there. So, training for first responders, I think, is really important when it comes to safety. Restraint and seclusion in schools has got to be addressed. And there has been legislation pending on restraint and seclusion for years in Congress, and it's still not going anywhere. But our kids are being thrown into closets. They're being beaten in school. They're being abused in school. They're being put in really dangerous restraints. And, so from a safety standpoint, that has to stop. Our kids have to stop being abused by, people who should be, caretakers and people that they should feel safe with and trust.
Absolutely. So those are some of the upcoming frontiers, the police training and really working towards that legislation on restraint and seclusion.
Right. Absolutely. So Avante's law is in the works, and that will help a lot with the police training if we can get that legislation to pass. So just encourage everybody to make sure you're contacting your senators at this point, and asking them to co-sponsor Avante's law, because that will help a lot. That will give us some significant funding for law enforcement agencies.
Yeah. And can people find information about how to contact their senators on your website, or can they find it somewhere else, do you know?
Well, what we did is we actually formed a coalition of several different organizations that wanted to work on this issue. So they can go to autismsafetycoalition.org. Okay. And it's all information about Avante's law and how to get in touch with your senator to ask them to co-sponsor the bill.
Awesome. That's great, because that is something that could be so effective, especially coming from parents and professionals. But by the time you do the Google search, you're like, oh, I can't figure out how to do it. So that's great. So we'll post up that website so that people can find that information easily.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, JJ.
Oh, thank you. Wendy, is there anything we didn't cover that you would love parents to know? I mean, there's so much to cover under the topic of safety. We could just talk about the bodies of water issue. And one thing that I loved, and I'm not sure, when I heard an interview about the Big Red Safety Toolbox, one of the things that I loved was using Google Earth to locate the bodies of water that are around. I don't know, I think that's included in the Big Red Safety Box. That's one of those tips, or to have that mapped out?
You want to have a... what we do is we have a first responder form that's in there that you can fill out a lot of information about your child and then provide it to your local police department so that if your child ever does go missing, they'll be able to pull that information up very quickly. But one of the things that we do recommend is identifying any bodies of water that are nearby, because we always say search water first, because even kids who, they don't like water, they, for some reason, could end up in the water, and you want to at least rule out the most dangerous places first. So if you're anywhere near any kind of body of water or pool or a busy street, those are the places you want to absolutely search first, because our kids die very, very quickly. So identifying any bodies of water is very important.
So, things like that. Is there anything else that you would just love people to know before we wrap up that we maybe didn't cover today?
Yeah, just make sure that your child has an effective means of communication and really work hard on that, because it's so difficult to teach safety skills to those kids, and they seem to be at a higher risk when it comes to injury and death from watering incidents. The nonverbal kids seem to be at a much higher risk of death. So I would definitely want to suggest, if your child does not currently have an effective means of communication, that should be your number one priority, is working on that. Even if it's just, using PECs for basic requests, start there and move up. But our kids need a way to tell us what they want and what they need.
That is so important, especially tying back to what you said, which is that wandering is a means of communication.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's important. And if you have professionals in your home or in your school who can really help with that, to really be advocating for that being the number one thing that they're addressing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wendy, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy. You're doing all of these great initiatives, and the work that the National Autism Association has been doing is incredible, and especially in such a short time. So just want to say thank you for everything that the whole organization is doing, and thank you for your time this morning, and hopefully this message really, gets across to our viewers, and they really start to prioritize, safety and communication, so that, and finding the triggers for whatever it is that is causing a child to want to leave the situation or get access to something else. It's a really important point. Those are great takeaways.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for focusing on safety this summer. I think it's great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, there are so many issues of safety around as our kids are getting older. Safety and sexuality, identifying when someone's being inappropriate with you or when you're being inappropriate with someone else. And, avoiding being a perpetrator by accident, and the internet and texting. And, just as a parent of a little girl myself, it's mind-blowing. So
yes, it is.
We've been really trying to at least bring awareness to how important it is in the mire of all of the things that we have to program for. It's really important that safety is up there, in the top 3 things that we're addressing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Good job, JJ. Good job.
We're trying. We're trying. Well, thank you so much, Wendy. It's been a joy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Talk with you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.